Every journey has its twists, but the real magic lies in how we navigate the unexpected. Welcome to Resilience with Dhrutisha, where we dive into the untold moments of perseverance, grit, and unstoppable spirit. In this podcast, we bring you candid, unfiltered conversations with leaders, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who have faced challenges, embraced uncertainty, and emerged stronger. These aren't just success stories, they're real lessons in resilience. Listen closely, and you might just have your own light bulb moment. Brought to you by C2C Organizational Development, where we put people before strategy, because that's where true transformation begins.
Hey there, you're now listening to Resilience with Ruti Shah, a podcast which brings you incredible stories of resilience, unfiltered, inspiring, and real. Stay tuned for today's guest.
Welcome back, listeners. Today, we're joined by Manish Arneja, Managing Partner at the Resilience Institute Southeast Asia. A seasoned coach in workplace resilience, he's worked with global giants like Shell, Unilever, and PwC, all while championing human centric conscious leadership. Manish, so glad to have you here. And thank you for agreeing to join us.
Thank you for having me and for the great initiative you have taken.
Thank you so much, Manish. Let's dive straight in. And you've been breathing and living resilience for quite a few years now. So, Manish, if I have to ask you this, how do you define resilience?
It took me a while to come up with my own definition and to simplify things because resilience is a very broad term. It's used in many dimensions, all the way from depression to high performance to willpower to get things going. But in my definition, it would be how do an individual or a team organization build their internal capacity to deal with external challenges? When I say, what do I do to build that internal capacity for an individual, is how they build their body, their emotions, their mind, so they are stronger to deal with adversities and challenges. Yeah. And if person is failing in resilience, the mind and body and emotions are started to work against them, where depression, anxiety, mental health challenges starts to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, and we see that quite often in organizations and outside too, right? Where some of the things where we have no control over are really taking up our consuming our lives in that sense.
Yeah. So people who have no resilience, they think external situation is the only thing. I only focus on that and not looking at myself and how do I build that capacity to thrive.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of us, we can do hundreds of things to build that resilience.
Right.
To manage adversity or challenges or new mergers, etc.
So would you say that resilience then, is it, of course, I mean, it's a skill that we can all learn, right? To build our resilience. If I have to ask you this, would you say that resilience is an art in the way you do it, or is there science behind it and you need to kind of tap into that?
In moment to moment, it's an art, because you have to really craft your responses. You have to be really calm, and how you show up moment to moment requires art. But below that, there's a lot of skills which are developed over time. Every single day, a person who show up as a resilient individual has done a lot of work on himself or herself. Clearly. So it's science, you can call it.
Yeah.
And there's evidence behind it that you can build all these capacities of your mind, emotions, and body to thrive.
Is that the work that the Resilience Institute does?
Yeah, that's what we do for last 25 years. I have been here for the 8.5 years, and I think it's like giving people some awareness that not everything is out of their control. There are a lot of things they can control: their actions, how they think, how they feel, how their physiology reacts, how they take action or not take action, and what makes them take that action, and how can they take more responsive action in different situations. So there are many skills people can have to build resilience. And when things are falling down, why they fall down, how they can bounce quickly.
Yeah, because there's only so much control that you have over the situation that comes at you, right? It's
Mhm.
how we really respond to it. And actually, as we think about it, when I was researching for my book as well, I came across a beautiful quote by Viktor Frankl, and he said that between stimulus and response is space, and in that space is our power,
Power.
is our response, right? And
And in that response lies a growth and freedom.
yes, exactly. So thank you. But it's such a powerful thing to say, right? So if I have to ask you this, what are some of the things that you absolutely must have to build your resilience?
For an individual, first, they need to understand the things that I can control. Yeah.
Mm.
So if I have to do something in a difficult situation, is first is what actions do I take? Yeah. And if I look at that, any action that I take is driven by something is happening within me.
Yeah.
And that is my physiology and my psychology.
Mm.
Something is happening in my body,
Yeah.
churning some emotions, some stress response, fight or flight is happening. Something is happening in my thought process.
Mhm.
And the closest, of course, physiology has a huge impact, but we don't face stressful situation like fight or flight like our ancestors did. In today's world is a cognitive thinking
Yeah.
that allows, which is very close to help our prefrontal cortex to process situations and respond effectively.
Yeah.
We are not being chased by a tiger. If we were being chased by a tiger, then physiological response would have been much more important. But in today, the foundation for our actions to be effective is how I think. And that is the super important foundation for anybody to learn. And if you put that in a scientific term, it's called metacognition.
Yeah.
I'm sure you have written that in your book.
Yeah.
And this is a skill, I would say, in my gut feel, at least 50% of leaders don't have, at least. And it's rapidly declining, meaning to, to be an observer of our thoughts and to be rising above our thoughts is not everybody's possibility. We have a thought and we act on a thought.
Mm.
And we lose resilience because the thought is coming, which can be very reactive, which can be stimulated by physiological, psychological changes, and we just act. And people who are resilient, they can observe a thought and take it as an object, not as a subject.
Yeah.
And take a possibility to zoom out very quickly and go out and say, hey, I'm thinking this. Why am I thinking this? And it takes effort and practice. And now, as you said, foundationally, this is getting weaker because foundationally, this is very important. And I would say it's getting weaker because a lot of people don't observe what they're thinking because they're always busy. And even if I have 5 minutes, I'll be on my phone and consuming data rather than zoning out of the situation. Hope that makes sense to you.
Absolutely. So what I'm also thinking right now is that yes, consumption of data is important because that's how we make sense of the world around us. But I think
Mm.
processing that information, seeing what is important, sifting through that information, and then acting upon what is really required, depending on the situation, on the context, becomes really important too. So,
Mm.
um, one of the ways that, and what I'm also hearing is that you're talking a little bit around this thing to reflect, where there are moments where you will need to pause, where you will need to say,
Mm.
okay, you know what, I need a timeout right now. I'm gonna
Mm.
I'm gonna just sit back and think about this. But in the modern day, in the always on culture, right, it's really difficult to even say that can I have a moment to think about it? Or can I just, go for a walk and think about it? I know a lot of leaders do that and they really thrive when they're able to speak up, but you're absolutely right. A lot of the leaders today are struggling with that because
Mm,
everything is as of yesterday. Everything is, I
mm,
need it now. This is ASAP. And I think that overall culture is really taking its toll on us. Uh, and in order to step out from the daily mundane tasks, and in order to say that, you know what, this can wait, it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot
yeah.
of patience to be able to build
Hmm.
this. And I think that's where sometimes leaders struggle, right? Um,
Mm,
so you did talk about, you kind of zoom out and
yes.
you look at the situation, right? Are there levels of doing that? Like, how have you seen that in practice? If you can share some maybe stories or anecdotes around it.
Yeah, it's my own experience of coaching leaders and reading about resilience. Many authors have talked about it. It's not a skill that everybody has, to be honest.
Mm.
And I would say that people, when they have switched on that conscious awareness of metacognition, of stepping out, not only from the task and taking some time away in reflection, moment to moment, and noticing how they're doing, their ability to move upward in their resilience journey becomes very fast after that. And that could be a very small switch when they start to see that my thought is not the subject, is just an object. I can observe, I can play with it. It's happening, it's not happening. It's not a fact. It's one of the possible uh, imagination I've had in that situation. So in that space, some of the authors and in our readings is we call this dual awareness, and there are many levels of awareness people can have. So if a
Mhm,
person is not switched on,
mhm,
meaning no awareness, they will act everything, whatever is happening in the situation, and they will succumb to that.
mhm,
Not aware of what's happening externally, they shout and scream, and they think they're right, and they feel that whatever thoughts, feelings, and whatever is happening to their body is constant. It's cannot be changed.
mm.
Then, as people build their level of awareness, they still cannot notice themselves. They start to observe and find faults in others. Oh, the waiter was not right, this not right. Judging people, criticizing people, because their observation of the external situation starts to develop.
Yeah.
Now, when they start to have that switch on, when their internal bulbs start to light up, that is, I am actually reacting, they are able to move a little bit higher. They can't respond at that point in time, but they realize after it has happened, and it's like, oh, I shouldn't have said this. That was so useless. And I regret over it. And that is also an awareness. Some people can't even do that, right? They
Yeah, yeah,
just go ahead with life and they can't do that.
yeah.
And as you build your resiliency, you are able to observe, but you still cannot stop it.
Mhm.
And as you build that further up, as you said, some people can take a time out. You say, oh, you know what? This is getting too difficult. My physiology and psychology is working against me right now. Whatever I would say, it's not going to be really useful. So let me just go for a walk and build that level of awareness till my brain cognitive functions are working effectively, and I would be able to say things that as I want to say. My mind will be in my control. That's also a higher level of awareness. And I would say the conscious leaders are able to reach that level,
Mm.
meaning they are able to do this on regular situations, but with their family, with close friends, it's still a struggle for many. They can be conscious in conscious situations, like with the clients, they can do it, but with their teams, it's hard. With their family, it's very hard. With their parents, it's much harder. Yeah. Now, if I would to say that if you really raise that level of awareness, that means I can control myself in any situation
Mm.
with anybody. And I can have streaks of 20 days without any challenges. I have a situation and I have a stimulus and a response, and the gap is so huge that I can slowly frame it in a way that I can choose the response, as you said, from Viktor Frankl quote. And the higher level of that is still when I am in the situation, I can notice the thought and I can change a thought and I can act on the other thought, replaying the and minimizing the old thought that is creating a habit, creating a loop, and finding a way to switch um, which is your ability to reframe situation much faster, and also to add more willpower on that new thought.
Yeah.
So that requires a lot of awareness for many. And each of us, even you, I, all of us, probably not everybody is amazing like David Goggins or super high performing athlete who can really look at the thought, throw them out, play with something else, and handle pain and handle misery. That's the highest level of resilience, right? But first is to switch on and say, people who have depression, lowest level of thought awareness. My thoughts have become bigger than me that I'll jump out of a building. How did that happen? Because the thought is creating such a havoc in my head. It says, you're useless, you did a bad thing, you're not a good person, you're not a good person. And that thought has become not the object, but the subject. And I'm listening to the subject and I'm acting on that thought.
Yeah.
Whereas if you look at people like David Goggins, who are highly motivational, they can reframe, not only reframe, reduce that thought, play the thought they like to play, and act on it with full willpower.
Yeah.
That requires a lot of resilience.
It does sound like a episode from Black Mirror, if you ask me.
Yeah. Oh, is
It's
it?
like you take something out and you kind of rearrange
Yeah,
it,
yeah,
put
play
it
with
back in
it.
your head.
Yes.
It sounds so. For a regular leader who has never really done anything like this before, right? Where can
Mm.
they start, Manish? Because I can so imagine before I even thought about writing the book, I was in a similar situation. I did have a natural tendency to bounce back and to be strong and be tough-minded and all of that. And that is attributed to different aspects of life. I didn't have a formula or a model or a starting point, or I couldn't define it. So if I have to ask you this, for someone who has never done this before,
Mm.
based on the experience that you've had, what do you
Mm.
suggest are some easy steps to get started on building up on this muscle of, reflecting, building
Oh,
self-awareness?
and as you're saying this, I'm thinking, what could be the good answer? And one is that people would say, what you read in the book, you start journaling, but I don't think it's really an easy start for many.
Yeah.
If I were to really think from my experience and not from any literature,
Yeah.
I think the ability to notice our thoughts means I am able to have a clear ability to focus.
Yeah.
Before you start to play with the thoughts, which is very
Mm.
subjective, I need to have a much clearer possibility to be objective in the external world.
Mm.
Meaning, if I were to start with, I will increase my observation skills.
Mm.
So if I would go for a walk in the park, I would try to just notice how I observe the plant and the thought that is happening as I observe the plant.
Mm.
They need to have that distinction. There are two things. So, for example, as I'm seeing the plant, oh, wow, green, bright, beautiful. And then there's a thought, oh, this is ugly, and my son would like it. Just be aware that this awareness of that observation outside, it's much easier.
Mm.
And they could just start with practicing 10, 15 minutes a day, going for a walk or doing something when they're just observing what's happening, maybe brushing their teeth, having a shower, and just being aware of the shower falling in the head without the thought. That's
Yeah.
where mindfulness starts to happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
you are with an experience and you're not with your thought, you're strengthening your muscles already
Mm.
when you focus on certain things. And the second thing that they could do for sure is to have some time in silence, which is very hard for many. Forget journaling, forget observing your thoughts, but can I sit for 10 minutes with myself doing nothing
Yeah.
and just let the thoughts run? Don't get stuck with it. Bring yourself back to what you're doing. So if I'm having coffee, just notice where the thoughts are, what's happening. I'm staying silent and bringing back to observing, like I said, the first part. And
Yeah.
that mindfulness practice can be really useful for many. If they start to build that up, then they can take a zone out. So which adaptive leadership Ron mentions as balcony view or zoning out skills. It is still a big step for many.
Yeah.
They need to start with having clear observation, having brushing your teeth with just brushing, not thinking, showering, just showering, not thinking,
Yeah.
eating, just eating, not thinking. And if they're going for a walk, just observing the plants and not making an assessment about the plant, noticing the differences about those
Yeah.
could be a good start.
And I would actually add to that and say that as you are doing that, because you're absolutely right, it is so critical to be able to do this. And fair warning for our listeners, it is tougher than what Manish makes it sound to be. It is really difficult because when we say that we are not thinking, that's impossible, right? We are always thinking, right? I think it's just about uh, being very conscious what your thoughts are, acknowledging them for what they are. And what has really helped me in my journey is a heavy dose of self-compassion. And I'll tell you why this has been so important. Because, and I was just having a discussion the other day with a colleague of mine, that it is such a high achievement culture that we have. And
Yeah.
success is everything. So one of the things I would definitely want to call out is that don't define your building of resilience or clearing up your head as success. Don't, it's not something that you need to achieve. It's just something that you need to be, right?
Yeah.
And that's
And
why
how long you can be.
exactly. So, building that muscle slowly but steadily in that sense. Um, and the reason I say self-compassion is important is because I remember when I was trying to practice this, and I did, and happy to share that I've been successful to some extent. It's still difficult. But when I started off, I'd be like, why am I not able to do this? You people have done it. Like, what is wrong with me? Why am I not able to? I need to be able to. So, and I would be so tough on
That's also thought. That's also a thought to
that's also
notice that
that.
thought.
So this thing about, constantly putting that pressure on yourself that, oh, this is just another thing that I need to do. So borrowing it from somewhere, I forgot where, it's not a to-do thing, it's a to-be list that you're
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
yourself, right? And for that, having that compassion for yourself,
Yeah.
giving yourself the permission to go in circles is okay. Yeah. Because I've seen a lot of people try, give up, and never trying again.
Yes.
Yeah, because they're like, oh, it's not me. It's so not me. I
Mm.
love being on the go. That's what energizes me. And I'm like, sure, okay, let's explore that a little bit, right? But
Yeah.
that
So
happens.
look at this thought. So for example, let's say somebody says, oh, this is not like me. I
Yeah.
tried it. It doesn't work. So let's look at the other side of resilience. That means an event happened, which was momentary in time. And that thought, which is saying it didn't happen last time, meaning I am a useless person. So I multiplied the effect of that action and I called myself, this is my personality, my belief, and everything I do is beyond that. That's where growth mindset comes in, to see as an experience. Whatever happened yesterday, it doesn't define me today.
Yeah.
And that's what people who are highly performing every single day says, what is the action I can do today where my thoughts are starting from zero, not from the baggages I carry. When my resilience is very low, I carry a lot of baggages. Every action or thought I am taking today is stuffed with the memory of how people treated me, my parents, the trauma that I faced. That happened. Those were the thoughts or the memories I carry. And you have the possibility to put the memory as memory, your action as action, and do the thoughts that helps you to take an action today. You can start to say that today is my ground day of ground zero. And also for you to be aware of that when you're having self-compassion, I should be this way. This is also our standards, which is another side of thoughts, which is what standards do I carry for how I should perform?
Yeah.
And when you start to explore this whole world of thoughts, you are on top of your thoughts. Then you are rolling on a high dice. Then you're playing a bigger game. Then you're saying the thought is actually the creation of everything. That is where purpose comes in. That is where motivation comes in. That is self-affirmation, determination theory comes in, which is saying that purpose is a thought repeated multiple times, driven by emotion, creating a physiological reaction and driving you forward in a certain direction. And you believe it's to be true. You believe it's going to happen and it's going to impact not just you, your team, the environment. And that's where purpose-driven leadership starts to emerge, because you are creating a thought which you think are powerful and going to enhance the life of you and people around you.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why it plays such a big role, right? The whole idea around purpose-driven leadership is so critical. And I've seen leaders spend months defining what that means for them, right?
Hmm.
Because it is so critical, and that's what keeps driving them, as you rightly said. But based on what we've discussed so far,
I don't know where we went, but yes, that has
no,
been
no,
really
no.
useful.
We good. We're still very much in the realms of resilience, which is great, which is the overall thing.
Okay,
So,
good.
don't worry about that. Would love to hear about a time when you personally, as well, right? When uh, reflection helped you pivot or bounce back more effectively than reaction ever could. That moment when Manish really reflected rather than reacted, and how that
Hmm.
changed the course of things for you.
I mean, every single day, I have to be mindful and noticing that I'm able to respond effectively, and in a situations where I'm not a difficult person to be with, and I'm not making myself miserable, or my emotions and thoughts are not making other people miserable. So that's a conscious thought. Of course, it's harder for tense situations when you're really triggered, but I think it's a daily practice. It could be small things like some WhatsApps coming, it's really creating a distress. You put your phone away. But right now, I'm thinking I'm trying to elevate it to a bit more in a way with my team members. It's not just I am getting triggered, I am raising my awareness of what is happening with the person in front of me. What are the thoughts running for that person to send this text as of now, which is empathy. And I think that has been really useful at the current level of journey I am. I'm not perfect, but it helps me to bounce, to really connect with somebody, really influence somebody, because I know I'm fine. I have built that resilience that I'm fine. My point is, are you okay?
Yeah.
And if I can step into that level, I allow my teams or other people to bounce as well. The other thing I'm doing is to just build a habit tracker. How many days that I have no bad day? No bad day as in I haven't shown up out of my character.
Mm.
And which is takes courage, takes resilience, takes practice, takes awareness. One example comes to my mind is where I really had to bounce my reaction. I was in a beach, and there was I have some fear because I had some incident happen where I was not very good with swimming, and I was really scared, and I'm still scared of going very deep in the water. So I saw, I was with my wife, and this lady was shouting for help in the middle of water, almost dying. And like two hands were up. And then I jumped into, so I was walking towards that, and I stepped pace up, and my thoughts were running at that point in time. Manish, no, you don't know swimming. You'll be scared. And at that point in time, I had to do a very quick reframe: 10 meters, 10 meters, 10 meters, 10 meters, 10 meters. You can come back. You can bring her back, 10 meters. So at that point in time, to shift your fear and to, sorry, kind of feeling that emotion,
Yeah.
to shift that fear and go with the purpose that you need to get that girl back, I think requires a lot of shifting of your narrative at that time.
Yeah. Oh my God, I can imagine. And for someone who is so fearful
Mm,
themselves, being able to do this.
yeah. No, I think that time it was just very clear for me that uh, how my mind is playing, and I have to build a narrative of the opposite, because nothing else matters. You know what I mean? That requires a lot of resilience to play with it. So
I
that's what
hope.
David Goggins talks about. Yeah, yeah, she was okay. I mean, she could
Okay.
understand she was Chinese, so, but
Okay.
anyway, I think she was okay to get back on the
Okay.
ground. And somebody else saw it, so somebody else pulled her as well.
Okay. Okay. Good to know. Oh my God, that is
Or
great,
it,
because there is so much trauma attached to that already, and then having to overcome that. I mean,
in
that
10 in 5 seconds, you don't have time, and it's sometimes you are just doing without thinking, but at that time my thinking was on that it's very deep where you're going. But then I have to reframe it in the same way, bring my purpose together, calibrate in a way, and just jump in. which requires to process it at a higher level of awareness, and
And that's what we were
that
talking
takes
about, right?
time.
The physiological and the psychological self kind of when they come together, that's when
Yeah,
you're able to do what you need to do,
yeah,
your best capacity in that sense. So
true.
thank you for sharing that. I think that's a very powerful example of what we're actually capable of and how we short sell ourselves sometimes, you know.
Yeah, that's what I mean. If you read David Goggins, The Highest Level of Resilience in Human Performance, one of the persons who maybe have shared his story, he talks about pain and how he just negate the monkeys running in his head and say, this is not useful, this is not useful, this is not useful, this is not me, this is not me, this is not me. I can work on what I want to tell myself and act on those intentions. It's amazing level of willpower, amazing level of willpower.
And I think that also comes with a very clear sense of who do I intend to be? How do I bring myself in front of people, right? How do I show up?
Hmm.
And not just as a leader, but as a human being. And that's what really drives a lot of people too, because um, I know this for a fact, right? When I saw examples of a few leaders, um, I would look at them, I'm like, I don't know what I want to be, but I know I don't want to be that.
Yeah, yeah,
And it takes
absolutely.
a lot of courage to be able to, you know, kind of follow through on that year after year, because uh, situations are going to challenge you.
Hmm.
Your context will change, how you're doing in life, where you are at, all of that will change. So there's this external stimuli that we talk about, right? That is
Will
something.
all change.
Yeah, they're constantly shifting. And
Hmm.
especially as we think about it from an uncertainty point of view, whether it's the trade war today or the tariffs or some of the you know problems at a civil level, if you think about it, in a lot of countries, right? The unrest that we are constantly consuming from media.
Hmm.
I think the only thing that really, if people are seeking for stability, they increasingly need to find it within as leaders,
Yeah.
because that's really where you will be able to find that sense of calm that you're looking for outside. I think it's time
True.
people kind of just put the spotlight on their internal bearings and say that, you know what, if this is all right, everything else can be managed. But I think what
Absolutely.
happens is
Yeah.
just the other way around.
Yeah, it's if people can understand this part of me is fully in my control.
Yes.
I can be in the prison and I can be the happiest person because I can play with my thoughts and emotions and feelings in the way that I want to play. I can say it's my time for meditation or rest, or it's supposed to happen. It could have been miserable. It's up to you on what thought you create in that space, what Viktor Frankl is talking about. And if
Yeah.
people start to understand that it's the external situation is like the movie running in the external reality, and I'm taking an impression of that external movie and creating an impression within me through my eyes, through my mind, and I have a possibility to choose how I am acting on that
Yeah.
external movie. It's not me, it's just the place I live in. It's like a matrix. It's like I'm a character in the video game.
Yeah.
Whatever way you want to see it, it allows people much more freedom.
It does. And, as we were discussing about leadership in general, right? I think one of the thoughts that also came to me while you were sharing that example is around how, when you are able to control your responses as well, and
Yeah.
uh, just the emotional agility that we talk about as well, right? That how do you choose not to respond in certain situations or choose a certain response over the other? What I've seen that also do is it helps build a lot of psychological safety. Yeah.
Mm,
And then it, instead of becoming like the in term or the something to look at, when you start leading it, people just see that, and
yes, exactly.
and they follow through on that too. So I think there is so much more that when a leader is resilient, they, besides their own sense of calm that they may feel, there's so much more that they end up doing for the team and the organization.
Oh, totally, totally. Huge,
Yeah.
huge, huge impact. I mean, the way a leader will show up, all the research has said, the more you are driven, and you keep yourself calm, the more you will create a resonance with people around you. People will not get into fight or flight. People will feel safe.
Yeah.
The level higher of that would be you staying authentic.
Yeah.
And when you're authentic, people will be able to show up authentically. Sometimes in psychological safety readings, we say, oh, you have to be authentic, but really authentic, like being open to your emotions and feelings and thoughts and really playing it fully without putting a mask on, it takes courage.
Yeah.
And the higher you drive with purpose, then you are influencing others, because when you're so driven with purpose, others will start to feel purposeful. So it's
Exactly.
also a growth for people. Yeah, I have to be calm first.
Yeah.
If I am calm, my people are calm. If I am able to be authentic, my people can be authentic. If I am purposeful, I am driving them towards leadership. Means they will follow me because they see me so connected to the purpose. I want to follow you because I feel so committed behind that purpose. That's why people join NGOs or do
Hmm.
bigger things with people, because they feel like, wow, I love this person. He or she is so committed to that purpose. I want to follow that individual.
Yeah, and I think what it also creates is that as you keep asking yourself in your head, that um, as you were saying, like a habit tracker, right? If
Yeah,
you're just able to, and for me, I feel like I constantly run out of time to do things that I want to do, and I wish that we had more hours in the day,
me
but
too. Me too.
I
I also get run out
and
of
there is
time.
so much more I would do to build my resilience as well. But I think what I really I have like a mental checklist of 3 or 4 questions that I
What do you do? Okay, love to hear
so
from you.
very simple. You've heard this several hundred times, I'm sure. But things that we do as we are coaching people as well. I do it to myself. It's simple as this. If I've had a tough situation, right? I would always ask myself, so what worked over here? Yeah. What could I have done better? Yeah. How could I have responded a little differently should a similar situation arise? Right. And if I have not done something better, I'm just going to ask myself, so how can I correct the situation in the future, right? So what could I have done better? What worked? What
Mm,
could have done better? And how am I going to recalibrate myself should a similar situation arise? And I can
mm.
tell you this, these days I'm using this more for my newly minted teenage daughter than as a leader.
Wow,
Because
very
it's
good.
like constantly at you, right? And you do need to create this sense of calm within yourself, and that's why I can resonate this better today than ever, to make sure that you're not driven by the external stimuli but the internal peace that you're seeking right around you.
Yeah.
uh,
So, on building on this, I mean,
yeah.
if those who are leading and listening to this, just to add to that flavor. So, the
Yeah.
first level of your reflection is my action. So, you zone out and see what did I do, what I did not do, and what I could have done differently.
Yes. Yeah.
Leaders can start with that.
Mm-hmm.
The level below is to check your body, emotions, and mind. If I put a camera and put an X ray onto you,
Yeah.
what were the thoughts running that made you act in a way?
Yeah.
What were the thoughts that you did not generate that could have helped you to act in a certain way? And what were the emotions, or what was going on in your stress levels? Were you fidgeting? Was your heart rate up? Were you looking at someone? Were you not looking at someone? If I put an X-ray at that point in time, what was happening in the physiology and psychology of that person? And
Yes.
if I would play that back again, how would I want to show up in my whole engines, which I can control? So
Yes.
the reflection as leaders will start to build that level of awareness, as you're doing with your daughter. Hey, have that awareness of what's happening with you, what actions you took, why you took it. Similarly, on what were the thoughts creating that action for you, like we do it for our coaches.
Yeah. And you know what, that actually creates amazing, so the dual level
Dual awareness, yeah.
awareness that you're talking about, what that actually does is it creates like a learning loop.
Yes.
Yeah. And and then what I'm sensing is that I keep saying this a lot, that resilience is a muscle that you build. But I think as you create this loop, you're also building a memory. Yeah.
Mm.
So it becomes like a muscle memory, right?
Yes,
And
yes.
and what that does is it's like your reflexes, it just automatically happens. So the more you do it, the better you become at it.
Yeah,
Then you don't have to think about it. You just respond in a certain way. And,
yeah.
and again, sounds easier to do, but it takes time. It takes, again,
Mhm.
courage to give yourself the permission because you may see things that you may not like, right? So I think you
Mm.
also need to kind
Absolutely
of,
spot on.
yeah, so you need to give yourself the permission to be able to do that, to be a little vulnerable with yourself. We keep talking about vulnerability when we think about, you need to be vulnerable with your team members, yada, yada, yada. I think you also need to be vulnerable to yourself.
Absolutely
And,
true.
and I think it starts with you, right? The power really lies in you in that sense.
Absolutely spot on.
Yeah.
And as we connect this back to purpose, when you keep repeating the same thing over and over again, it becomes the way you show up.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's where you need to create the thoughts of how I want to show up.
Mm,
The more you are clear with those, the more your physiology and psychology will listen to you.
absolutely.
And that's where the whole game of self-driven leadership. It's not that you like perfect, just be aware. Sometimes I'll make mistakes. It's just how I want to show up. It didn't show up, what worked, what didn't work. But at least you have an intention to guide your brain, to guide your mind, to guide your body towards certain outcome.
Yeah. And that's why we say that when we think about resilience, it's not really a destination, it's a journey. It's
Yes,
not
it
like,
is.
hey, I've achieved resilience. No, not one of those things, right? It's
Yes,
just
true.
the journey that you're on.
It's momentarily, it's a
It's the moment.
state. It can go up and down. It's a muscle, like can go up and down, as you
Yeah,
mentioned. Absolutely spot on.
absolutely. Great. So, Manish, it's been a very interesting discussion, and
Yes, it
I would
indeed.
love to bring in some candor now, right? And you've been very candid in the entire discussion, very vulnerable. So thank you so much for that. But as I look at you as someone who's an expert in resilience, and which you are, right?
Thank you so
So
much.
if
I'm not
we,
an expert. I'm
no,
still work in progress on many aspects.
we
Yes.
all are, right? So what's
Mm.
that? Again, just to end it with some candor, what is the one practice that you still struggle with, despite
Oh, many.
doing so much? Yes.
I There's one I aspire to and I struggle with is to build the. So I'll talk two perhaps which comes to my mind. One is, as I shared an example of higher level of resilience, is to play against pain and willpower and go beyond the threshold. I still am working again. I'm working for it to build that muscle. That what's my willpower? Can I notice my thoughts? Can I notice my emotion? Can I take it? What's my endurance level of pain? Can I cross that boundary? It's a lifelong process. It's not perfect, but I think that's the positive side. The negative one is cravings that I do struggle with, because I know exactly. So my level of awareness is not that I can reframe very quickly. I can do many reframes at one point in time. I won't shout at anyone. I can miss my flight. I can take another flight. I can do multiple things in action. But this one is kind of deep rooted, I feel, because so let's say if I am going out, my narrative will say, oh, today's Friday, you have worked really hard. And I notice my monkeys in my head talking. And I would listen to them and I'll go ahead with it and I'll regret of my action that I have eaten. No, you're laughing because that's human, right?
That is
But at
so
the
true.
end, but as an expert on this area, so the problem with me is that I'm not enjoying that moment because I'm observing myself really clearly, viscerally, what's happening. My heart rate is going up, my saliva is on my mouth, my thought is you deserve it, tomorrow we'll think about it, you haven't had a drink for a while. And
I
then I'm
can
thinking,
so relate to this because this was yesterday.
so I'm getting better at it, but I also know that it's coming from a huge gut reaction, which my bacteria, which I have built up over years with eating a lot of junk, and also it could be a body reaction from fear that I might not find this food. I don't know, but
Hmm.
it is still out of control, which for some people is quite easy. Which for
Yeah.
some people I really think it's easy. What do you think about that?
Oh, totally agree. So just yesterday, I had this moment where I gave in to my craving, and I was home alone, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm just going to take a little bit," and it's never a little bit.
Yes.
So I just finished this entire, whatever I was eating. I just finished the entire box of it instead of just a little bit.
So I have a whole list of reframe. I don't have it now, but so when I say a little bit, it's never a little bit. That's one sentence I say. If you take one, it will never be one. The other one is you will regret it next morning. Number two is you're killing your streak of your all the things that I have built up. It's helping me to be more resistant, not resilient. or managing it. But yes, it's a work in progress. I don't have
Totally a work
issues
in
with
progress.
gadgets or Instagram because I'm very clear of
Oh
habit
yeah, so I'm not on
managing
social
the.
media. Besides LinkedIn, I am not on any of the other platforms, which has been a blessing. And I'm very disciplined in terms of my digital intake. So I'm very happy with
Hmm,
that. Food usually I am, but there are times,
hmm.
and then when you travel, it goes totally out of the window. But yeah, so that's definitely, thank you for sharing that. It's
No, my
definitely
pleasure.
something that a lot of us are a work in progress.
But there's some things which I've done also to get to that level. Earlier, it was out of control, but now it's like I never call myself a foodie. I never say this tastes amazing. I only think of food as for energy, not for mood. All
Mhm.
the things that has helped me to get to here. It's not 100%, but I'm sure a lot of us who struggle with food cravings can really look at the thoughts that generate at that time when you are salivating, and not to get to that level when you're into fight or flight
Yeah.
already.
Yeah. So I just asked myself, do you really need it or do you really want it? And 100% of the times, the answer is, I want it. Okay, so then should we just switch? And I literally do this. Yeah, I take a fruit instead of fried. So fried
Ah,
food is my
me too.
poison.
Yeah.
And also the power of keeping things at eye level. What do you see is what you consume, right? So
Wow, very good.
right on the island, the kitchen island, I would have fruits instead of anything else.
Great.
Everything else is tucked inside. And when
Hmm,
you're rushed for time, I'll just pick up a fruit instead of, you know,
that's true.
scavenging the cabinet to find something fried and savory. But yeah, so that's true. All right. One last advice that you have for leaders in order to build their resilience. We did start with that. So now I'm going to
Hmm.
end with that too, where if there's one thing that you would want leaders to do.
I think cut down the phone consumption. That's
Mm,
the only thing I would start with. This is a lot of things are happening in their body and brain, and which I don't want to spend time on now, but just be aware the more you are on the screen, the more you're less resilient. Let's call it this way. So if you can find your opportunity to not check media right in the morning and right before going to bed, make your sleep really solid without external stimulus. That means your internal processes will not be impacted a lot. Yeah. So before sleeping, no devices, at least at that point in time. That's my starting advice for anybody who wants to build their resilience. Because if you're checking your phone right before going to bed, thought process are highly impacted. Your emotions are highly impacted during sleep. Your body recovery is highly impacted. So all your engines are going to wake up weaker
yeah.
because you have traumatized yourself with high intents of trade wars or external stimulus right before going to bed.
All
So if I
which you
were
have
to say one
yeah.
advice, an hour before bed, do anything but no devices.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Manish. It's been an absolute pleasure having you here. And
Thank you
what a
so
great
much, Shu.
discussion. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
All right, listeners, I think you will agree with me. It was quite an intense conversation. I mean, Manish spoke with such composure and clarity, emphasizing the importance of focusing on what we can control, what I can control, which is a key aspect of managing our thoughts effectively. Ramana, what did you think of it?
Yeah, Dhruti, that was such an authentic conversation. I felt the same. And, I'd like to, one thing he did call out, which stood out for me, around metacognition.
Yep.
Metacognition, which is, the ability to observe our own thoughts. And he did point out that this is something nearly 50% of leaders lack. Yet it's so foundational to how we think, lead, and grow, right? So,
Absolutely, Ramana. And I've noticed that as well. And I think he was being generous when he said 50% of leaders lack. I think a lot of us really don't do it the way we are supposed to. And there's a lot of data points and information out there, but it's difficult. Here's the thing, we really struggle to find the time to do the right things. Um, but as we wrap up, here's a thought I would like to leave you with. and this is to all my listeners out there, resilience is not just a skill, it's a trait. And when we start embracing it as part of who we are, not just something we do, that is when real change begins from within. Thank you for tuning in to Resilience with Triti Shah. Until next time, keep reflecting, keep showing up, and keep building your resilience. Bye-bye.